So this week I thought I'd show you a really cool animation technique that can be done all entirely right here in Photoshop. It's really quite cool. So I've got my text here on its own layer against a black background layer. And what I want is to have kind of a blurred version of this text kind of glare itself over as if light's passing over it or through it, and you kind of get a light glare of that lettering as it passes over it. And we're going to do that all right here in Photoshop. So the first thing I need to do is create a new layer. Then I'm going to go over here and get my gradient tool. I'm going to get my eyedropper first. I'm actually going to sample this bright orange color inside the text here. I'm going to go over here and then get the gradient tool, and we're going to make sure we're going from the color to a transparent. And on that blank layer, I'm just going to go right in the center here and hold my shift key down and just kind of draw a gradient so it kind of covers most of the text area, at least from top to bottom. So there's that. Now I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to lock my transparency and then fill this layer with white. And then I'm going to bring up my free transform and actually scale this down, because what I want is to have the gradient kind of have a light, really light center going out to the orange color, just like that. And then I'm just going to do my Command or Control E to merge that down. So I've got this really highlighted glare on its own layer. Now, I'm going to create a selection of the text. I'm going to hold down my Command or Control key and click right on the text layer here, and that loads it as a selection. Now, still on this gradient layer here, I'm going to go ahead and click and activate a layer mask. And you can see it has gone ahead and masked out that gradient where the text is. You can see right here. Now I'm going to have to unlink these. By default, the layer and the layer mask are linked together. So if I move this around, you see they stay together. I actually want to unlink that. So I'm going to click on that little chain there and unlink it. So now I can move either one of these around independently. If I move the gradient around, you see it moves around the text here. So that's what we want. Now I'm going to go back to the layer mask here, and we're going to do a couple of things to this. Now the first thing I want to do is actually go under Filter and go to Other, Maximum. And what this is going to do is actually increase the size of the text, kind of expands it in a way. You can see if I move the slider, it really expands it way out there. I don't want to do it quite that much. I want to do about a 3. So it's just like that. And you can see it kind of makes the text a little jagged, but we're not going to worry about that because we're about to do something to fix that. Still on the layer mask, we're going to go under Filter to Blur, Gaussian Blur. And we're going to do about a 5 pixel blur here. That looks pretty good, and we'll hit OK. So our layer mask is blurred and sized up just a little bit. But with that layer mask still active, I'm going to go ahead and hit my Command or Control T and bring up Free Transform. And I'm going to scale this text out. I'm scaling the layer mask, not the item on the layer itself, but the layer mask. And I'm going to scale it out just about right there, right to where the edges are. So we're slightly bigger than the text itself with the layer mask on this gradient layer here. Now, if I take the item on this layer and move it around, you see we're getting a pretty cool effect. And that's exactly what I want, is that glare effect to kind of show through. Just like that. Now, here's what I need to do. It's got the glare on the above the text, but it doesn't quite have any glare on the text itself. So what do I need to do? I'm going to create a new layer right down here. And I'm going to load that previous gradient as a selection on this layer. And I'm going to fill this layer with white, this grid. And we're going to change this layer's blending mode to overlay. Now, I'm going to link these two layers. Here I have the original gradient, which gives us the colored glare out there. We have this white gradient, which is actually lighting up the text. You can see it's giving us that glow inside there. But when I animate these, I want these two layers to move together. So I need to link them. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key and select both these layers and click on this little chain right here to link those two layers. Now when I move these around, they move together. You can see that the glare is lighting up the text, and we're also getting that glare as it presents itself above it as we pass over. Now, that's done. We need to animate it now. So I'm actually going to move this over to where it's going to be in its starting position right off to the side here. I'm going to go and get my animation window up. Go to under Window, Animation. I'll get this long window here. Actually size it in so we can see it. So there's our first frame of our animation, which is exactly what we're looking at right here. So I move those items over, and now I want to animate them. So I'm going to create a new frame. Now, for some reason, by default, my timing is set to 3 seconds. I'm going to select both of those frames and actually change these to no delay. I don't want any delay, except on the first frame. I do want to change this to about 2 seconds. Now, I'm going to go to my next frame. Now, with the second frame active, we're going to go back up into our document here. I'm going to zoom out of this a little bit so I can get more control of what I'm doing here. That item is off screen. If I hold down my shift key and click, I'm going to drag it across to the other side where it goes completely off. You just kind of got a look of how the animation is going to run through. So first frame it's over here, second frame it's over here. So now I want to tell Photoshop to create all those frames in between by going right here. This is the tween feature. So it's going to, with that frame selected, I'm going to tween with the previous frame. And I'm going to do about, let's say a 20. I want to do a 25 frame animation. So I'm going to input 23 here because we've already got our beginning and end frames. So we just need to input the frames in between. So I'm going to put 23 and do it with all layers, position, opacity, all good. Okay. So just hit OK, and there it has gone and created all those frames. Now if I wanted to do a rough preview of what I'm looking at, let's hit play right here, and it will count those. Now, you see what happened here? This is something important to know. When you set the timing on your first frame, any frames you create after that are going to take up that time. So I'm going to hold down my shift key and select all the frames from frame 2 to the end of the animation, and then we'll change that time to no delay. So there, the time is set for 2 seconds over here, and then everything after that is no delay. So if I go select that first frame and hit play, it'll wait 2 seconds, and then it will play through. Now, because we're in Photoshop, it's going to step through it in a way, because it's essentially having to render each one. So in order to get a more fluid preview of what we're doing here, if I go to File, Save for Web, and it will pull up this giant Save for Web window here, which I'm not really able to make really small, well, somewhat. But what you want to do is, you can't really see it, but right down here at the bottom there's a web preview icon for a browser. You can actually preview this animation in a browser. When I've got mine set to Firefox, I'm just going to click on that and launch it, and it will generate the preview. And it takes a minute. We'll bring up the window here, and if I drag this into play here, you can actually see it cycles through the animation, giving us a much more fluid movement. But there you can see we're getting really cool animation, and we've only done it with just a couple of layers, few layer masks, and did it all right there in Photoshop. So I encourage you to give it a try and just really discover the power of the animation features right there in Photoshop and what you can do with it. So have fun and see you next time.